Hi, I'm Dr. Dan Ratner. As part of our how-to series, today we will be looking at how to understand the importance of being welcoming and how and why this experience or the lack thereof can affect your power column. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below and we will get back to you personally. And finally, you can reserve your place in one of my seminars or purchase any of my mind-body guides, also known as the PDFs, at www.crushingdoubt.org. Now, without further ado, let's take a closer look at the incredible importance of a welcoming attitude. There are so many ways we can take care of each other, but some of these ways really are more important than others, and this can be understood best if you understand a little developmental psychology. We all have lots and lots of needs, wishes, and hopes to be fulfilled, and a large amount of the physical pain we feel comes from when we don't or cannot get our needs met. But this is all the more true when the need, wish, or hope is higher stakes. Remember that I talk about whether or not things are high stakes a lot when asking my questions about the columns. The emotional themes we develop must be broad, high stakes, and specific. When it comes to the doubt column, I know that fear, uncertainty, questions, and confusion all spike when things are higher stakes. And in the power column, everything is high stakes as we are looking at the most elemental parts of ourselves and what we need. So what makes things high stakes? Things are going to be higher stakes when a larger portion of our investment is threatened. They will be higher when a key piece of ourselves is in danger of being hurt as well. They also can be higher stakes when we are getting close to realizing our dreams. The stakes can also be raised when things hang in the balance for people we love the most. My kids come to mind here. Or stakes can be raised when more primitive or basic needs are in danger of not being met. There are many more reasons that can highlight when and why things can become high stakes, but it is this last reason that explains my topic for today. When looking at the most primitive or basic needs and desires, it is only logical that our first needs are fitting of this description the most, the high stakes description. And this, of course, happens not only in childhood, but even more so when we are babies. When the most basic needs that we have go unmet, the trauma is catastrophic. This is something that I sometimes do like to remind people of, and it's partly from my own personal experience. The earlier the trauma, the worse it actually is, because the baby has more needs. So let's take a look at what these basic needs are. First and foremost, we require safety, and this includes being fed, having shelter, having our temperature regulated well, being able to breathe, being able to sleep, feeling human touch, finding engagement with the environment, not being physically, emotionally, or sexually attacked or abused, and most importantly, being loved. Those are the basic needs right there. And they start off with us needing it even the most when we're babies. Now, some would argue that being fed or having shelter are more important than having love, and we can easily understand their point from a pure survival perspective. But at the same time, if you reverse the fallout and babies don't receive love but have their basic physical needs met, we find disastrous results. In fact, there is a term, it's called anaclitic depression, and this refers to just such an experience, and it is well documented that babies in caring situations in which basic physical needs are met, but there is no loving experience, actually do not thrive, and they can even die. Dying from a lack of love. It really does happen. Now, why am I telling you this? Because so many of you out there have had some version of this, where even in cases where you were loved, you maybe were not loved so well, or not loved for the key parts of the self that you hold the most dear. Many try to justify their own experiences to avoid recognition that they were sacrificed or truly not important enough. I don't mean to be a downer with these things. Quite the contrary. I want to help people accept the fullness of their trauma so that they can move past the repeated painful experience of being aware of such treatment, but still fighting off its reality. But most centrally, I am turning my attention to why certain things hurt the most, and as such, what we can do in a real community or in families or among friends to take care of each other where it counts the most. Which brings me to the idea of inclusion. What does it mean when we are not included? To those who had a nice secure childhood and attachment with parents, it doesn't always have to mean so much. But to those who did not have such good circumstances, inclusion, or a welcoming stance becomes absolutely critical to a sense of safety, well-being, and self-value. The absolute bedrock of self-esteem is whether or not we are loved, accepted, and enjoyed. If we do not have these things, we understandably question our worth. It's actually pretty bizarre to look at a person with high self-esteem versus low self-esteem and give them the credit for it. Almost all of it came from what resources you had and what happened to you. In fact, in EMDR, one of my favorite therapy modalities that helps with trauma and is related to mind-body work, the therapist talks about whether or not we are well-resourced in any given area. When any environment, group, or individual is welcoming to us, it is an affirmation of our worth, whether we need that affirmation or not, and it becomes a resource that we carry inside of ourselves. But for people who have suffered trauma, this affirmation can literally be life or death. Many people have actually committed suicide because they were not given the sense that they could be accepted, believed, validated, loved, and welcomed. It's that simple. It was just that. When I think of welcoming, it is hard for me to not go back to the origins of my own life. Early childhood trauma is sometimes regarded as lucky because we don't remember it, or if we suffered losses, they came before we could understand them or feel them, almost as if they didn't happen. But remember, the body knows it all, and it doesn't forget a thing. Many pain and symptom sufferers are suffering underneath it all at the hands of not feeling welcome or valued in the world at all. My favorite of the early psychoanalysts is Donald Winnicott, and he said that the most aggressive sentence one can say is, "I am." This is an assertion that we matter no matter what anyone else thinks. I am doesn't matter what you say. But when people are not welcoming to us or don't appreciate us, which is, let's face it, another form of not being welcomed, it runs the risk of being psychologically annihilating. The wish to be loved and accepted is so basic and so primitive that to have this fail is damning. And this is why it is much more important to be inclusive, accepting, and welcoming to other people as a baseline way of operating, because it isn't a small matter. Not being welcome can yield such devastation that people may not recover, or their disillusionment becomes so great that they give up or sink into a deep depression. And as bad as that is, it becomes even worse when we realize how little it takes to make someone feel included, valuable, and welcome. So if you're choosing between two paths, or multiple paths, as we usually are, I want to put in a plug for putting a welcome, inclusive, and admiring stance front and center all the time. If you do just one thing consistently with people, it should be this: always welcoming. Not only are you avoiding the highest of stakes disappointments, but you will actually be saving lives, and it requires very little effort. Most people won't even take you up on the inclusion because the need has already been met. They just wanted to not be excluded, and then they can go on their merry way. I really hope you enjoyed this episode on the importance of being welcoming and how and why this experience or the lack thereof can affect your power column. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and we will get back to you personally.